It's already the position under European law that you're allowed to travel freely to work, but you're not allowed just to hang on if you have no prospect of work. So that is already a provision. This is about making sure that we are able to deliver on
But
that.
they will be required to leave. So even if they've got their own resources, because they won't be getting benefits, if they've got their own resources, they will be deported or they'll be issued a notice?
This is a matter for the Immigration Service's arrangements for dealing with people who are here without a legal right to be here. Obviously, if somebody has got their own resources, it is conceivable that they might qualify for residence under other aspects of the UK's own immigration rules, but that would have to be looked at case by case.
Right. OK, well, it's an interesting one, that, because it was a bold promise in the manifesto. We'll call that a score draw. The manifesto said if an EU migrant child is living abroad, then they should receive no child benefit. Has that been achieved?
On the particular issue of child benefit, the proposal that is in the papers is that child benefit should be paid indexed to the living standards of the country where the child is residing. Now, it is a compromise, but on the other hand, if one simply ended all child benefit payments, where the parent was working here, the child living abroad, there might paradoxically be an incentive for people to bring their children with them.
So you're
in
happy
order
to make
qualify.
that compromise?
So we think that what's in here, if that can be nailed down, that represents a reasonable compromise. It will, I think, reassure people, one element in restoring fairness to the benefit system, and I think will make a difference in terms of welfare spending.
I mean, I'm asking all this because, of course, the Prime Minister said, hand on heart, he had achieved the manifesto goal.
Yeah, but he said, if you go back to look at what he said in its entirety, he said what we have is the basis for a good settlement, but there is a lot of work still to be done.
So hang on, this is very clear, because he implied, in fact, he said directly, if he got this deal, as long as this was delivered, he would be happy to join an EU if we weren't a member. So his position is that he's happy with the deal, or he isn't happy with the deal on the table?
His position is that this is a very good basis for a deal that delivers answers to the things about which the British people have been most concerned. But, as you will see if you've gone through the texts, there are elements in it that are still in square brackets and so on. There is still negotiation to be done. This is a deal that will require the agreement of all other 27 heads of government. So
I want to know
I don't want to take any of that for granted. Negotiations to do.
Will the Prime Minister be happy if he gets this deal on child benefit?
If we get that as part of
the whole package,
a broad overall package, then we think that would represent a reasonable compromise.
But that is not. That's done and dusted now.
We are looking at every aspect of this negotiation because the different parts all hang together. Nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. And I think you'll find every government in Europe is saying that to me.
Another thing in the manifesto had said, we will insist that EU migrants who want to claim tax credits and child benefit must live here and contribute for a minimum of 4 years. That's the one everybody's been talking about. Has that been achieved?
It's a live negotiation. Where we've got to today is a big advance on where we were. What we've got today is explicit recognition by the European institutions. First, that in-work welfare systems can act as an artificial pull factor for migration into a particular country. Secondly, that individual countries should be entitled to do something about it, and there are drafts of a legal mechanism that would enable action to be taken. And third, the Commission says, as part of today's set of documents, that they believe that the United Kingdom would qualify to pull that so-called emergency brake now.
And that would be that is now on offer, that has been written down in this Tusk memo, that would be satisfactory to the British government or not?
You say
we haven't achieved it yet.
You say this is now on offer. It is a proposal. It's a working draft in a live negotiation.
I understand you've got something, but I just want to quote the manifesto. It said this will be an absolute requirement in the renegotiation. An absolute requirement. Again, I come back to the fact the Prime Minister said he's achieved what was written in the manifesto. Patently, they choose whether we apply.
I keep coming back to the fact that if you look at what the Prime Minister said today, he said all along, this is a very good, important step forward, but this is also a live negotiation.
Right, but you're hovering between the view that we're going to get more and that you're happy with what we've got. Which is it? Are we going to get more? Are you hopeful we'll get more, or is this
I'm saying this is the good basis on which to move towards a deal at the next summit, but we're not there yet.
So why did the Prime Minister today say, if I could get a deal like this, I would be enthusiastically campaigning to join the EU if we weren't in it?
If you could get a deal like this with all the T's crossed and I's dotted, there are important elements in the draft that we have today, which do still require further negotiation.
But there's a difference between crossing a T and trying to renegotiate a point that appears to have been conceded, which is that it's an emergency break on 4-year benefits. But we're not going to get the absolute requirement, which was there will be no benefits in work benefits for migrants.
The PM's always been clear about this. Go back to his speech in November 2014 when he addressed the issue of migration and welfare in detail. He said consistently that what he's about is getting the right outcome.
What research has been done in British government about the numbers who are coming in, pulled, to use your word, by the in-work benefit system?
There are a lot of moving parts in making that judgment. We know from Department of Work and Pensions figures that something like 40% of recently arrived migrants
very
from the
dodgy
EU
ground.
I'm taking figures from the
But what I don't want to know,
DWP.
I don't want to know how many people claim benefits. I want to know how many people come here as a result of those benefits being claimed. And that's a very different matter, because Steve Nicol of the Office for Budget Responsibility used the phrase "not much" when asked by a parliamentary committee.
I think he did say that he was speaking sort of somewhat offhanded in a personal capacity there, not on behalf of the OBR. But
in my opinion, not much.
I think when you look at the fact that somebody who comes to the UK by claiming in-work benefits is able to be better off taking a minimum wage unskilled job in this country than they would by taking even a skilled job in some of the countries people are coming from, you can see that that system of access from day one to in-work benefits makes us a more attractive location.
But can you, hand on heart, to coin a phrase, tell me today that as a result of this, migration from the European Union will go down?
Oh, I'm very confident that if a deal of this kind goes through, and I repeat again, a lot of the detail has yet to be negotiated, then the incentives that our welfare system provides will be reduced, and therefore people have less incentive to come to the UK.
So it will go down.
That will depend in part also on what happens in their home countries, how good they are at creating jobs, how desperate or
so
otherwise
just to be
people
clear,
feel.
Yes or no, will immigration from the European Union go down if we get our way? It depends.
What I'm saying that this will reduce very significantly the pull factors that our welfare system provides.
We don't really know, because you haven't actually done any research on it, so we don't know.
There's more than one motivating force when people choose both whether to leave their home country and then which other country they want to move to. They're looking at what are their job prospects, career prospects at home, and they compare what other destinations might offer.
So we're not in control, and this is not going to put us in control. Look, even last month, December, the Prime Minister talked about this package as fundamental change. Do you really, as you stand and look at this now, think this is a fundamental change in our relationship with the EU?
Yeah, I think it's pretty fundamental change, not just in our relationship with the EU, but in the way the EU thinks about itself and intends to operate in the future.
Are you ready now to vote, to say you're going to vote to stay in?
I'm very hopeful that after a successful deal, I'll campaign alongside the Prime Minister for continued membership of a reformed European Union.
Can I suggest to you what's really going on here is that David Cameron has to remain open-minded, because he's told his ministers, you and the rest of them, they can't campaign yet either, because he wants to hold the Eurosceptics back until as close as possible to the referendum. Is that what's really going on? People like Chris Grayling would love to just be let out the traps, ready to argue the case that they make against all this.
The entire government was elected and took office on a shared collective commitment to renegotiate and then have a referendum. And that's something that everyone signed up to. Now, there are long-standing, honourable differences of view within all political parties about whether ultimately membership of the EU for Britain is a good or a bad thing. And that's why the Prime Minister has said that in these exceptional circumstances, when it comes to referendum campaign, ministers who've had a long-standing position against EU membership would be free to campaign for that in their personal capacity.
David Lidington, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.